So they pretty much identify themselves in two ways. There's not a lot of work going on in Tahiti. The educational system is not the best necessarily. So the two ways that they identify are family and religion. And that's like how they introduce themselves. I'm this person. They normally introduce their last name first, so you can identify and place. And there aren't too many family names in Tahiti. They're just big families. And sometimes they intermarry. So they always tell you, it's almost like a Lord of the Rings thing when they're like, I'm Aragorn, son of blah, blah, blah. You know, that's literally how they introduce themselves. And so it's important to understand also that they live together most of the time in families. Like there would be a street and that is like one family. It's like, there might be multiple houses or it might just be one house that has been added onto. And it's just like the aunt moves in or the grandma gets old and so they take care of her and she lives with them. So family is important in the sense that they're very close. In terms of feeling connected to each other, because everyone kind of associates with family, it's almost become like the norm. So they almost don't really interact like families here. It's just like their neighbors or their friends. Even though they are all family and they all live together, they're not necessarily close. They kind of do their own thing, but they live together. And the other way is religion. So obviously as a missionary, that's kind of exciting because everyone's interested in religion. Pretty much every single person we met believed in God, which was a huge stepping stone to introduce everything else about the gospel. But it was hard because they took it very, they accepted everyone. They kind of saw the truth in all religions. Some big demographics religiously were Jehovah's Witness, Sanito, do you know? Okay. It's like the breakoff church of the Mormon church, but they believe that it was Joseph Smith's sons. And it's just like successively until recently, the most recent prophet of their church had no sons. So then they gave women the priesthood. So I think it's like Community of Christ or something.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. And Catholic, pretty big, not as big as you might expect on the main island, but pretty big in the outer islands. So the Mormon church is only maybe, single digit percentage of the population. Still substantial, but about half of its members are inactive just because there is kind of an acceptance of all religions. And they don't really differentiate. So it was cool to see people realize that the Book of Mormon, even though they have it in the Community of Christ Church, they could kind of read it and gain a testimony of it and differentiate. That was a big thing. We as missionaries, we didn't really teach them anything new. We just helped them differentiate when they felt the Spirit and when they didn't. And if they participated in the activities of our church and they felt that peace or comfort, that was like the defining moment for them, if they accepted that as a manifestation or not. We would tell them things and they would believe us right away. And so you had to be very careful. You had to make sure that you knew the doctrines, that you weren't having to correct things later or anything else. It was hard to make sure that they had that solid conversion to the church and not just an acceptance of our beliefs or the church culture. The demographic that I would describe as being the most accepting is not a religion, it's not a culture, it's a mother with children. Her husband normally wasn't interested. We taught many, many middle-aged women who put into practice the things that we taught, and it was they were mostly motivated by love for their children and wanting to find peace and stability. Life in Tahiti is really hard. Most people live in poverty. It was mostly houses that they kind of built themselves, or not out of like palm tree leaves or anything, like, drywall or cardboard or something, but that was the majority of the lessons that we taught with progressing investigators were mothers of children. Normally they were not married to the father of their children, and so that became a big block for a lot of the progressing investigators, was that the We had these mothers with real testimonies who wanted to change the lives for their children, and they progressed and they went to church, and sometimes they brought their kids too, but they needed to get married before they could be baptized. That was a huge block.